Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So February has arrived and you know what that means. It is officially Black History Month in the US. Now, I don't know if you can tell from my accent, okay, but I am not American, okay? I'm not even Canadian. I'm in fact from the UK, and here in the UK, we celebrate Black History Month during October as opposed to February, which is why I posted my British Black History Month recommendations video back in October of last year. But for today's video, we are going to be diving into the wonderful and vast world of Black American entertainment, where I'm going to be giving you guys my recommendations for what to watch this US Black History Month. Now, much like with my British Black History Month video where I was focusing on British talent and British filmmakers, I'm going to be focusing on American talent and filmmakers for today's video. And this is actually going to be so much easier. so much easier, because quite frankly, we're spoiled for choice when it comes to Black American entertainment, because there's just so much more of it in comparison to what we saw here in the UK. And because there is so much of it, I have talked about other Black American projects in the past on my channel. I make a point to highlight such projects here. So without a doubt, there is a huge selection of Black American entertainment for you guys to check out upon my recommendations in other videos. And of course, I also have my best movies of the decade video, where I have a specific category for the Black experience that will feature a ton of other great recommendations for you guys to check out this month as well. But in the interest of giving you guys even more Black American projects for you guys to check out, as well as kind of consolidating all of these recommendations into one video, I decided to go ahead and do this video for you guys so that we can, you know, kind of reference it throughout the year perhaps. And also do keep in mind that I am planning on doing this on an annual basis. So if there's anything that is missing from today's list, as well as the vast library of Black American projects that I've talked about on my channel, then do feel free to let me know down in the comments below what you would like to see for next year's video. Without further ado, let's dive into my recommendations for what you guys should watch this US Black History Month in 2021. First up, we have If Beale Street Could Talk, directed by Barry Jenkins. Now, February is not just Black History Month in the US, it is also where Valentine's Day resides. And I think it would be a really great idea for you guys to check out this incredible love story during Valentine's Day. It's a little bit bittersweet, it's a little bit depressing in some parts, but I do think it has so much more of a somber, so much more of an emotional angle to it. It's a very powerful film in that way. This film tells the incredible story of two young Black Americans whose love and excitement for the future are dragged through the harrowing reality of being Black in the 1970s, where Black men were vastly, disproportionately targeted by police with no due process in a judicial landscape that favored the rich to begin with. And obviously this bears absolutely no resemblance to the situation today, right? Anywho, aside from the legal battles displayed here, we also have some harsh realities of the difficulties Black people face doing anything, including even renting a place to live. The film has a very bittersweet but realistic ending that does have an underlying sense of hope to it, which I think is very beautiful but also refreshing because it doesn't feel artificial in any way. I do think that the chemistry between the two leads is also completely faultless. I think the two leads do an incredible job of melding into each other as characters. You root for them, you root for their love and their relationship, and then you want them to just go further in life because they deserve it, and to see them go through all of these hurdles and these obstacles completely breaks your heart. And speaking of incredible performances in this film, Regina King Regina King is absolutely phenomenal in this film. She absolutely deserved her Academy Award for her role here because she's truly phenomenal. She exemplifies a woman who is just so desperate. She feels helpless. She wants to help her daughter in any way that she can, and Regina King just so perfectly portrays all of the emotions that this woman is experiencing as she realizes that there's just so little that she can do for her daughter and her grandchild. And another excellent element of this film is its score. The score of If Beale Street Could Talk is truly phenomenal, and it was also done by Nicholas Britell, who also did the score for Moonlight and more famously for Succession. The man is talented. The man is an absolute talent. I often talk about my adoration and admiration for Ludwig Göransson, who who is an incredible musical composer. I truly think that Nicholas Britell is kind of on par with him in terms of this new generation of musical geniuses emerging in Hollywood. So next up we have Insecure, created by Issa Rae. Now I don't even need to say much on this one. I have my reviews of the last season of Insecure up on my channel for you guys to check out if you'd like, but this is such a unique and phenomenal and much needed show. This is one of the rare occasions where we've gotten a chance to see the modern day black woman shine in all of her everyday ordinary glory. There isn't a case of this, you know, ultra strong, powerful black woman being present here. There isn't the case of this, you know, mystical black woman who has all of the answers and is just there to serve a white lead. There's none of that here. This is just a demonstration of the ordinary lives of these black female characters who have flaws, who have issues with their relationships and their friendships, who are just trying to make it work. They're trying to just get it together. They're just trying to get it together. They're just trying to learn how to adult, and it's just so relatable. It doesn't feel pretentious in any way. It just feels down to earth, relatable, and just, it's so needed in the space. Like, it's so needed in the industry. There was a vacant hole. There was a vacant gaping hole in the industry for this kind of content, and the fact that Insecure has been able to fill it so well just makes me infinitely happy. And as I said in my British Black History Month video, I would kind of compare Insecure to, say, a Michaela Cole's Chewing Gum, or even an I May Destroy You, although that one very much specifically focuses on certain topics that Insecure doesn't really touch on that much. But it's kind of an equivalence in the sense that we're dealing with ordinary black female characters who don't have mystical powers, who aren't supremely strong and intelligent and just untouchably perfect. They're real life human beings that are three-dimensional characters that you can relate to, and it's just so important to have that kind of representation of black female characters on television. I'm so glad that Issa Rae has found such success with this show. Having said that though, I did hear that season 5 is going to be the final season of Insecure, and that truly breaks my heart. Like, it shattered my heart because I'm really upset to see this show go. But speaking of the unique factor, my next recommendation is Sorry to Bother You, directed by Boots Riley. Now, I've actually previously talked about this film in my Best Movies of 2018 video, which was my first video on this platform. So if you guys want to check out my thoughts on this film, you can kind of go back and watch that if you want to, at your own risk. It was my first video after all. But I love this film. I truly love this film. I stand by my recommendation from 2018 because it is crazy. It is kooky. Like, it is, there is nothing else like it. There is literally nothing else like it, but at the same time it's so excellent and just genius, because there are some films and TV shows out there that are crazy and kooky for the sake of being crazy and kooky, but they make no sense. They don't have substance to them. But this film is so clever in the way that it's able to envelop the craziness, the kookiness, with a ton of incredibly poignant social commentary, whether it's the case of exaggerating their blackness and performing in that manner, which we see painfully demonstrated in one of the scenes in this film. Oh, you'll know it when you see it. But then there's also a case of downplaying blackness in order to kind of fit in with the status quo and be presented as someone who is professional and articulate and whatnot, as we see in this film again when it comes to the white voice scenario, where Lakeith Stanfield's character is working at a call center and he has to act a certain way in order to get more clients. It's just so cleverly done, and the aesthetic of the film as well is just so kitsch and just so interesting, and again very unique. I would highly recommend you check it out. And honestly, don't learn anything else about the film, because I guarantee you will be shocked if you just walk in blind, and it's just so much more fulfilling that way anyways. So my next recommendation is actually an animated film, and yes, you guessed it, it's The Princess and the Frog. Now listen, listen up. I don't know how to convey how excited I was when this film was announced. When this film came out, young Jean was just beyond words excited. This film meant so much to me. To see the first ever black princess that Disney gave us in the cinema was truly just breathtaking. It was a moment that I will always remember. And then you have the added fact that the film is excellent. And then you have the added fact that the film is literally excellent. Like, what more can I possibly say? The film is almost perfect. The animation is beautiful. The way that they realized New Orleans in the 1920s is stunning. Not to mention the character of Tiana, who is the first real hard-working, relatable character that we've ever come across in the Disney princess lineup. She's a phenomenal Disney princess, truly someone to look up to for young girls and boys, and I really appreciate the fact that they created such an admirable character to be the first ever Black Disney princess. She's just untouchable. She's literally untouchable. The only thing that does piss me off when it comes to this film is the fact that it does unfortunately fall prey to that weird and racist trend of Black characters in animation undergoing wacky transformations that mean that they don't remain in their Black bodies for the majority of the film's runtime. I think The Princess and the Frog is actually the most heinous example of this trend, but we also see in films like Spies in Disguise and unfortunately most recently with Soul, although in the case of Soul the character of Joe does show up quite a bit in the film, but still crazy hijinks ensue and he does end up becoming a soul. A soul. So unfortunately we don't really see him as a Black character with his own voice for the majority of the film. But I fully believe that it is possible to acknowledge the flaws that this film has without it stopping you from enjoying the film overall. I still very much love The Princess and the Frog, even though I do now see the issue with her turning into a frog. Turning into a frog for the majority of her own film. Like, oh my goodness. Imagine being Disney. Imagine being Disney and thinking, you know what, people don't like Black people. Like, oh, people don't like Black people. Okay, let's keep them off screen for as long as possible. But you know what they do like? Slimy frogs. Slimy frogs. That's what they prefer to see for the majority of this runtime. So we'll make them frogs throughout the film. And as a bonus point, we won't have a bunch of Black people on screen for far too long in a Disney animated film. Like, oh, job done. Give me my bonus now. Like, imagine being that Disney exec. Oh, I can't stand it. Another point that I wanted to mention when it comes to The Princess and the Frog is Prince Naveen. Let's give Prince Naveen his due right now, because he's the best Disney prince. I'll argue with a wall. He is the best Disney prince. He has the most personality. He actually goes through a character arc in the story, in the film, where he was a terrible character beforehand, but then he falls in love with Tiana. He actually does stuff for her. Like, he learns how to cook for her. He proposes to her in this most beautiful way where she's in frog form, and even though he wants the wealth and the riches of a princess, he decides to follow his heart instead, and he shows her how to follow her heart, so they're both learning from each other. What? Where else? Prince Naveen and Princess Tiana are the best Disney prince couple ever, point blank period, argue with a wall. I really wanted to give Prince Naveen his due here because he's a phenomenal character and also the most attractive. Oh, let's move on. So whilst we're on the animation train, I thought I would slide in another recommendation in Hair Love. Now, I have talked about Hair Love previously in a video. I can't remember which one specifically, probably an Oscar video or some sort, but Hair Love is this incredible short animated film, and it did actually win the Academy Award for Best Animated Short, I believe last year or the year before, and deservedly so, because it is just so adorable. Last time I checked, it was available on YouTube, so perhaps you can check it out literally here on this platform, but I would highly recommend you check out Hair Love without getting into any detail for the film itself, because it is a short film, so I'd be giving away a lot. But considering the very short runtime, it is able to allow us to build such a connection with the characters that we're introduced to literally moments after we're introduced to them. First of all, because the animation is just so beautifully done. It's so visually distinctive, which is always something that I look for when it comes to animation. But also the characterizations of these characters are just, they're so adorable. They're just so likable. Immediately you have a smile on your face when you're introduced to the characters. But then of course you have the beautiful story. Like, I don't want to delve into it, like I said, because there'll be huge spoilers, but the beautiful story of this short film. How are you able to cram in like hours worth of storytelling in a short film, making it so compelling, so emotionally moving, so memorable? It takes such talent to be able to do that, and I think Matthew A. Cherry did an incredible job with this story, and I'm happy to recommend it as part of the recommendations for Black History Month for this year. So next up, we're going in a completely different direction, and here I have some horror or horror adjacent adjacent recommendations for you guys to check out this Black History Month. Now, I am not a horror person. Okay, if you've been here for a while, you will know that horror is not my forte. I'm a chicken. I will happily say it. I am just so chicken when it comes to horror. I'm too afraid. I'm too scared. Like, it's not something that I enjoy often. But when it comes to horror that is led by Black talent and by Black actors and filmmakers like Jordan Peele, for example, we'll talk about him in a second, I tend to want to be there. Like, I tend to want to check it out, even though it's against my very nature to do so, because I want to support the Black talent. I want to support this movement that I've spoken of previously, of the diversification of representation of Black people and Black stories and characters in cinema and in television. I think that this is one of the biggest and most beneficial trends that we have seen in diversity overall in the last decade. And I think diving into the horror genre with Black filmmakers and Black talent is also another great trend to be seen. But first of all, we do have Us. Now, I've already spoken at length of my absolute adoration for Get Out. Get Out is one of my favorite films of the last decade. If you want to check out that video where I talk about the best films of the decade and I dive into, films about the Black experience specifically, you can check out that video. But I talk at length about how much I adore Get Out. I think it's just such a clever film. But my recommendation for today's video, since I've already talked about Get Out, is actually going to be Get Out's sister or cousin, and that is Jordan Peele's Us. Now, Us was slightly more controversial than Get Out in terms of, its success and its critical acclaim. I do think that it is still, to this day, an utter hate crime. An utter hate crime that Lupita Nyong'o wasn't nominated for her performance in this film. Why was everyone asleep? Why was everyone asleep that year? Because she deserved the nomination for her performance here. She was phenomenal in this film. Whatever. We don't have time to go into it. The performances overall were just incredible. I think Winston Duke did an excellent job with his performance in this film as well. But the fact that Lupita Nyong'o was snubbed at the Academy Awards, because of course it's a genre film, so they don't really like to acknowledge, horror films, which is why Daniel Kaluuya's nomination for his role in Get Out was so phenomenal and extraordinary. But I do think it was a huge shame that Lupita did not get paid that same justice. But still, I would say that in the case of Us, it's another example of a very complex, layered story that is told within the horror genre. I would say that in the case of, horror elements, this very much fits more comfortably in the horror genre than Get Out, which it could be argued is more of a thriller, especially considering I didn't find it particularly scary. So if I don't find it scary, then you're dealing with a thriller instead of a horror. But still, I do think that even though Us is scarier and I haven't been able to go back to it, I do still think that they do both do such a great job of exploring all of these social commentary within the genre and creating all of these layers in the storytelling where you feel like it's a huge mystery that you want to unravel, and watching it once isn't sufficient. Like, as soon as I saw Us, I had to go online and look up the meanings of everything, and I love things like that. I love films and TV shows that get me to think and process and try to digest all of the little pieces of information. And even though I would say that overall perhaps Us did not come together as seamlessly as Get Out did, especially when it comes to the final act of the film, I would say that the journey overall was still very compelling. It's still very unique within the genre. It broke barriers in terms of the representation in the genre as well as the type of storytelling, and I'm still very excited to see what Jordan Peele has to offer in the future. And whilst we're already on the Jordan Peele / horror train, why not slide in a Lovecraft Country for my next recommendation? A Lovecraft Country is yet another one that I've covered extensively on my channel, so if you'd like to check out my thoughts on that series, you can do so. I have a playlist on my channel that you can just kind of click on and go through all of the episodes. But it is an excellent show. It is truly an excellent show, and it was yet another show that really had me thinking from episode to episode, especially because it had a weekly release schedule. I really was left just kind of, looking at various videos and trying to find answers on Reddit threads. In my opinion, Lovecraft Country really was a cultural reset. Like, it was a phenomenon. Like, the people who are watching Lovecraft Country were in it. Like, they were obsessed with it. Either it wasn't for you and you just kind of switched off after episode 2, or you were deeply into it. And I fell into the latter category firmly. Speaking of the diversification of representation of Black people on screen, my next recommendation very much highlights the importance of intersectionality when it comes to the portrayal of certain groups in film and in television. And in particular, when it comes to the Black community, I do think that a sub-community that is very much underserved here would be the LGBTQ community. I think LGBTQ people in the Black community often feel underrepresented, especially because of the inner issues within the community when it comes to, you know, homophobia and the like. And so when it comes to presenting some really powerful and important and historically iconic stories within the Black American community, I would be wholly remiss if I did not include the death and life of Marsha P Johnson. Now, this is a Netflix documentary that explores the death and life of Marsha P Johnson, who is such an incredible LGBTQ icon in American and indeed global history. Marsha P Johnson was one of the most influential LGBTQ figures in America and was on the front lines of the gay rights movement of the 1980s. And she went even further to champion the rights of transgender people within the community who often went ignored. Like I said, this documentary very much highlights the importance of intersectionality when it comes to any civil rights movement. When it comes to my video overall, I'm talking about Black representation on screen, but in this documentary specifically, it explores the divisions between the subgroups of the LGBTQIA community and how oftentimes the T in LGBTQ was often left out of the conversation, especially on the onset of the movement. Like I said, the documentary very much highlights the importance of intersectionality within these movements and how, you know, even within a marginalized movement, you can see a difference in the way that people are treated and the rights that they are afforded based on their race or their gender or their social class. As a result, it leads you to question whether or not these movements are actually very inclusive, and people like Marsha P Johnson, as well as her friend Sylvia Rivera, were early fighters, early activists within the LGBTQ community who are trying to combat these issues. The documentary also makes a very deliberate point to highlight the fact that the issues that faced the transgender community in the 1980s and 90s still prevail to this day, and it very much shows the fact that the justice system and indeed the media very much underplay violence against transgender people, in particular transgender Black women in America. And it's just so heartbreaking to see how there are all of these cases of violence against transgender people that go, you know, under sentenced and undervalued and underreported within the media, just demonstrating how the media continues to want to, you know, push aside these issues and treat transgender people like they're some sort of taboo subject, as opposed to being, you know, genuine people who are a part of these communities who are left out of the conversation because they're still discriminated against so harshly. For my next recommendation, we have yet another example of a series that demonstrates excellent social commentary, but also another example of why it's so important to have intersectionality in your representation of Black stories, because next up we have the Boondocks. The Boondocks is a series that I recently discovered, and quite frankly, I don't know what I was doing with my life up until that point. I don't think I was fully living, quite frankly, until I started watching the Boondocks, because my God, my God, why has anyone tried after this? Like, why didn't we just hang it up after the Boondocks? Because they did it. They did the job. They did everything. The social commentary on that series is so sharp. It's so relevant even to this day, even though the series started in 2005. As I watched the series, I couldn't believe that it was commenting on issues that faced Black people like 15 years ago, because it seemed as though it was commenting on right now, like literally right now. This show had such vision. It was so extraordinarily carried out, but then it's also existing in this space. I mean, speaking of a vacuum, speaking of a vacant hole within the film industry and the television industry, there is nothing else like this series that features Black characters, tells Black stories within this kind of anime genre. Like, it is absolutely phenomenal to see this series from 2005 adopt this genre, which has become so much popular within the Black community itself to this day. It adopted this genre to create this Black storytelling, and it is just so unique for that, but also again for the intelligence of the social commentary and how forward thinking it was. There are so many themes and social issues that are explored just brilliantly on this series, from the media, and especially the media that is directed towards Black people, BET I'm talking about, BET specifically. And then we have rap culture. We also have capitalism being explored here, and the civil rights movement and its legacies being explored here. And there was even an episode specifically about slavery that looked at it from a completely different angle, from several completely different angles, in this very creative way. I can't believe I didn't know about this show. I will say, if there was a downside to this series, is that it is quite controversial because of the way that it tackles certain issues, especially because of its enduring homophobia. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad. There's also a lot of colorism in this series, which is unfortunate. I think if this series had taken a similar approach to these issues as it did to, the other issues like capitalism and slavery, for example, in the case of homophobia or colorism or anti-LGBTQ sentiment within the Black community, I think it could have done such a great job of commenting on these things and actually creating a constructive criticism and analysis of these things within the Black community, as opposed to just kind of engaging in that behavior as well, which it unfortunately does, especially in the earlier episodes. I will say that there is absolutely nothing that can take away from the genius vocal performance of Regina King, who voices the characters of Huey and Riley. Regina King did some genius vocal, one of the best vocal performers of our time, truly. The woman is multi-talented. The woman has so many facets to her. It's amazing. And I think she really shines here on this show. Then we also have an incredible vocal performance by John Witherspoon, who portrays the grandfather, who is also amazing. But then who really gives him a run for his money is Gary Anthony Williams, who portrays Uncle Ruckus, one of the best depictions, best iterations of an Uncle Tom caricature ever put on screen. Hands down, he is one of the best Uncle Tom characters. He gives Samuel L. Jackson in Django Unchained a run for his money, a sprint for his money, because he is truly phenomenal. Uncle Ruckus is iconic. He is disgusting. He's a horrible person, but he's iconic. Finally, we've reached my last recommendation for Black History Month of 2021. And here, of course, this list would not be complete without the inclusion of Ava DuVernay's Selma. Now, Selma centers around the 1965 Selma to Montgomery voting rights marches that were initiated and directed by James Bevel, and of course led by the one and only Martin Luther King Jr., who is brilliantly portrayed by David Oyelowo. Now, this performance wasn't nominated for an Academy Award, and honestly, after the day that I've had with these Golden Globe nominations omitting a ton of incredible performances by Black actors, I feel exhausted at this point. Like, I was angry when I was reading about this film and how it wasn't nominated for many Academy Awards that it rightfully deserved. But at this point, I'm just tired. I'm filming this at 1 a.m. It's been a long day of reading nonsense. So at this point, I'm not even surprised. Why would I be? Because it was an incredible performance. So of course it makes sense that it wouldn't go rewarded. David Oyelowo is such an underrated actor. It hurts me. Like, it's personally offensive to me. He is incredible. But in this, the man is legendary. He takes on the persona of Martin Luther King Jr. just seamlessly. He disappears into the role. First of all, the accent is perfect. He's a British actor and the accent is absolutely perfect. And I've talked about how, some Black Americans are kind of against the idea of British actors portraying prominent Black American figures of history. I kind of discussed this and my brief thoughts on the diaspora wars in the British Black History Month video, so you can check that out if you want to discuss it. There's not much to discuss. I disagree with the sentiment wholeheartedly. I think he was the perfect person for the job and he absolutely delivered. Another thing that this film does so brilliantly, and by the way, the directing by Ava DuVernay again is just absolutely excellent. This film is such a great example of the insurmountable feeling of community and courage and strength and determination in the face of the most horrible displays of putrid hatred. The way that people are fighting against these innocent people who only want justice, who only want voting rights, who want to be treated as citizens of the United States as their constitution allows them to be and their laws allow them to be. The way that these white spectators treat these people made me sick. It made me sick to my stomach, and also it made me even sicker to think that this is not that far into the past. And in fact, it's not in the past at all, because we've seen in recent days even that this sort of sentiment is very much alive, which is just equally disturbing to see this, in the film, but also on the news there, present, showing you, reminding you that there are people who believe that black people shouldn't exist, that they shouldn't have the same rights as others, as citizens of the United States, as a group of people who built the United States off of their backs. It makes me literally ill, and I think this film does a great job of demonstrating the sense of community that these people had in the face of such horrible hatred. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my recommendations for what to watch this US Black History Month, it's time for you guys to let me know what you would check out down in the comments below. And also, if you have any recommendations of your own, I would very much love to hear them. Like I said, there will be an annual video, so next year there'll be a whole other lot of films and TV shows being recommended. But if you want to get a head start, let me know down in the comments what you guys would want to check out. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.